So many people reach out to us with a desire to move to the Oregon coast, but the Oregon coast is huge, and really where the conversation typically starts is, what towns should I be looking in? Everybody's preference is going to be different. So in this video, we're going to talk about a framework to start narrowing down what towns you should be focusing on, and all that starts now. Hey, what's up everybody? This is Paul Clem with the Home Team Brokers coming to you from the Oregon coast. And if this is your first time to the channel living on the Oregon coast and you want to get more videos like this, make sure to hit the subscribe button and tap the little bell to get notified every time we drop a new video. We've helped so many people relocate to the Oregon coast, and as real estate professionals, we love to help with that process. So if that's you, give us a call, send us a text, shoot us an email, or click that link down below in the description of the video. Schedule a Zoom call with us. Either way, we would love to help with your move to the Oregon coast. All right, so as you may know by now, and we talk about it all the time, the Oregon coast has 363 miles of coastline, a lot of uninterrupted coastline, and a ton of towns that are right on the coast, right, with easy beach access right next to the ocean, which is what a lot of people are looking for. So a lot of these towns have several things in common. A lot of these towns really rely on tourism and really are propped up by tourism. And so they're gonna have great restaurants and shops and galleries and parks and outdoor activities, and of course the ocean and the beach access. Some towns are gonna have a few hundred people, some towns are gonna have a few thousand people, some towns are going to have 10,000 plus people. And every town is going to have its own unique character to it. So for a lot of people, especially who are relocating from out of state, the question is, what towns should I be focusing on? And there's really a big range, and it's going to depend on your lifestyle. It's going to depend on what you're looking to do in your day-to-day and what type of environment you want to live in. I think on one hand, you could really live anywhere on the Oregon coast and get a lot of the benefits that anybody moving to the Oregon coast would be seeking: the beauty, the nature, and of course the ocean. But again, these towns are going to vary as far as what they offer. So how do you start looking at that? How do you start narrowing things down and determining what type of town you want to live in? We're going to talk about 6 different criteria that we always talk about with people to start navigating this conversation. And the first on the list is the population. So again, these are all going to be relatively small towns. You're going to have about a half a dozen towns with about 10,000 people. So you're looking at Astoria, and then Seaside, down into Tillamook, which I think has closer to maybe 6,000 people, into Lincoln City, into Newport, into Florence, and then Coos Bay, North Bend has about 25,000 people between them. And then you have to get all the way down into Brookings and Harbor to find the next kind of population center, right? So in between all of these towns, there are much smaller towns with 1,000, 1,500, 2,500 people, and there's a few towns with just a few hundred people. Some of these really small towns are incorporated towns with their own city government. Some of them are just little small villages that are unincorporated areas. Either way, I think that if you lived in a much smaller area, it's going to be the case that you'll be getting up into or down into one of these larger towns for some of your day-to-day needs, like groceries, medical services, things like that. But if you are looking for a small town, you're going to find it on the Oregon coast. But do you want to be in a small town that is really distributed and really spread out and not very dense and doesn't have a lot of people around? It's going to be more quiet, more laid back. I think some people do move to the Oregon coast that want to be a little more reclusive, and they don't really, they're not really looking for a social scene. They don't really want to get out and do much necessarily, and they want that really small town feel. Well, you're definitely going to be able to find that, and a lot of people, I think, and probably the majority of people, at least more than half the people we talk to that are moving to the Oregon coast, they like a little more laid back, lifestyle, that's what they're looking for, that's what part of what they're moving to the Oregon coast for, but they don't want a place that is just completely rural and has no people in it. So again, you're going to have several different options in towns that do have a fair amount of people, several thousand people, up to 10,000 people. But not all populations here are created equal because, again, so many of these towns are catered to tourism. So you look at a town like Cannon Beach, which I believe has about 1,500 people, full-time residents, you're going to get several thousand people traveling in and out of there on a weekly basis because, again, it is such a tourism-heavy area. It's so close to Portland, a ton of great restaurants and shops and things like that, and that goes for a lot of other towns as well. Astoria brings in a lot of tourism, Seaside maybe more than anywhere else. Lincoln City brings in a lot of overnight stays, and Newport has like the aquarium and the bayfront and Nye Beach and down the line. So you have to evaluate the towns based on the size in terms of the population of full-time residents, but also what do the tourism attractions look like and how busy is it going to be on a day-to-day basis. That's definitely something that we can help you with and have a conversation about. All right, the next thing to look at are the amenities and the services that a town, a municipality, or even a county or region offers. And you're going to find a pretty big range here, and a lot of this will come down to the size of the town as well, so the population size. But the public utilities, the public services, fire districts, police force, waste transfer stations. If you're doing a project at your home and you have a lot of materials to discard, or if you're getting rid of a bunch of stuff and you want to go to the dump, well, how far do you need to travel? Is there going to be something in town, or do you need to drive 45 minutes to an hour to make that happen? So these are going to be things that we can evaluate on a town-by-town basis. Mixed in with a lot of these other criteria, I think there's always going to be trade-offs for people, but again, looking at an area based on the services that are offered, the amenities that are offered, relative to things that you would need in your day-to-day life. Internet comes to mind. A lot of people ask about internet, medical services. I think a lot of people are surprised about medical services when they look at the Oregon coast because it is a relatively rural, spread out area with a lot of small towns. A lot of people are surprised to find out that you're probably not going to be more than 30 minutes from a hospital, and the town that you're in probably does have some medical offices and medical services available. But even like parks and walkways and infrastructure for a town, a lot of these towns don't have sidewalks. Some are much more developed and have parks and better walking paths and trails and things like that. And local events too. A lot of these towns are going to be really community oriented. A lot of people are going to be really involved in the community. There's going to be several events going on throughout the year. Some areas, again, are going to cater to people who are going to want a little more of a reclusive lifestyle and don't really care about, big events, and probably don't want a ton of tourism coming in on a day-to-day basis or weekly basis, or in particular on the weekends. All right, next on the list is going to be the restaurants, the shops, the galleries, the things to do in town. So a lot of towns really punch above their weight. We talked about Cannon Beach, for example, really small town, but has a long strip, kind of Main Street, downtown area with several dozen shops and restaurants and galleries and a lot of things to get out and do. There's going to be towns, there's going to be places where anywhere you live in town, a really short drive or even a walk, you can kind of hit the town, go get a drink, go get dinner, do a little bit of shopping, be around people, and that's not going to be the case in some other places. You look at a place like Lincoln City, for example, which has 10,000 people plus. It's very spread out, very sprawled. It's a really long stretch of Highway 101, but it lacks a cohesive downtown area where you can get out and go to these restaurants, go to the shops, do things like that. So there's going to be areas that have kind of the quintessential beach town town center area. There's going to be towns that lack that. And the size of the town or population of the town don't necessarily dictate that. But the question is, that we pose to a lot of people is that something you want in your day-to-day life? Do you want to be able to get out and go to town and go to restaurants and do some of these things that are going to be a little more active from a social perspective? Well, again, some towns are going to offer that at a much higher degree. Some towns really aren't going to offer that much at all. All right, the next thing to consider is going to be the landscape Of course, again, you have the beach and the ocean just about anywhere you would live on the Oregon coast. Even if you're a little bit inland, even if you're a little bit east of the highway, you're still going to be 10-15 minute drive to the beach, to beach access, just about anywhere you would live. So if you're not living on the beach, if you don't have those ocean views, you're still going to be able to get there on a daily basis if you wanted to. But a lot of these towns are set on rivers. You know, they might be on the mouth of a river where the river comes out from the east. Or a lot of these towns aren't going to be right on the ocean. There are several sections of Highway 101 that kind of veer off from the ocean a little bit, and you're in more of kind of a valley area or more of a mountainous area, for example. So I think there's probably not going to be an area that lacks natural beauty as far as the landscape that you're surrounded by, but there's going to be areas that are going to be closer to rivers than the ocean, for example. There's going to be areas that have more elevation changes. You're going to be up on hills, kind of backed up onto the coastal range a little more. There's going to be areas that are going to be flatter, a little more of a valley, for example. And a lot of people that we talk to have something in mind. You know, they have a vision of the type of environment that they want to live in. A lot of people want to be up in the trees. You know, they want to be in a heavily wooded area. And there's going to be some towns in some regions of the Oregon coast where you'll be able to get that, where there's actually residential development in areas that are hilly, you know, in wooded landscapes, in wooded areas that are going to be close to town. And there's going to be regions that don't offer that necessarily. And again, this is a conversation that we have with people where we can guide that discussion. And once we talk about what type of landscape or environment you want to live in, we can recommend areas that maybe you should be focusing on more. All right, the next big consideration is proximity. And in a lot of videos, I know we've talked about proximity to an airport, but this is also proximity to major highways, highways that will take you east over to I-5 to where you can access other parts of Western Oregon, or you can get into bigger towns where you might need to access a little bit better shopping, a little bit better medical services, things like that, for example, from time to time. So there's going to be towns that are an hour, hour and a half away from an airport. There's going to be towns that are 2.5 hours. There's going to be towns that, depending on where you need to travel to, you might need to drive 4 or 5 hours to Portland Airport, PDX. And so looking at where a town that you're interested in falls on the map relative to some other areas that you would be traveling out to, again, whether it's an airport or just other areas of Western Oregon, will be really important, because there's going to be areas in particular on the southern Oregon coast, a little bit on the central Oregon coast too, where you're going to be a little bit more secluded and a little bit more isolated. Some people come to find that that's not something that they want. They want to be able to get out and travel a little bit easier. So if you are in like Yachats, for example, on the central Oregon coast, you have to travel down to Florence to then get over into Eugene, or you have to travel up into Newport to get over into Corvallis, or up into Lincoln City to get over to Salem or into Portland. And so it's not as accessible. And then similarly on the southern Oregon coast, there's going to be long stretches that lack a highway that goes back east toward I-5. So really the stretch from Reedsport all the way down to Brookings, it's going to be much less accessible to different areas in Western Oregon. Now, if you're on the northern Oregon coast, there's going to be several highways that take you back east, and you're going to be able to access Portland in particular, maybe an hour and 15 minutes, maybe 90 minutes tops. That can vary depending on where exactly you're getting to, obviously. For example, the Portland Airport is on the east side of Portland, northeast side of Portland, so you can get into Portland in about 90 minutes from a lot of areas in on the northern Oregon coast, but then you have to get all the way through town, potentially fight through traffic. It might take 2.5 hours to get to the airport, for example. So we just want to have a conversation about what type of accessibility you need and where you're going to need to get to, and then we can start breaking it down from there as far as what towns and what regions are going to be best to focus on. All right, next on the list is your outdoor activities. So this is going to vary, but I think you will get a lot of consistency all up and down the Oregon coast, but it depends on what you want to get into. So there's going to be better areas for fishing. There's going to be better areas for river fishing versus ocean fishing. There's going to be areas that maybe offer a much higher volume of great hiking in closer proximity, although just about anywhere you are on the Oregon coast, you're going to be near a state rec area, a state forest, things like that, a state park where you can get out and walk around and explore, and there's probably going to be several options for that, but the landscapes are going to be a little bit different. There's just going to be different offerings overall. But, you know, if you want to get into crabbing, you know, if you want to get into clamming, if you have a kayak, if you have a paddleboard, if you love surfing. I mean, I'm not a surfer, but a lot of people ask us where the best surf spots are. Now, there's a lot of information online. Obviously, the best surf spots probably aren't necessarily published, but those are things that we can help you with, right? And there's going to be areas where if there's a certain activity that you want to engage in on a regular basis, you might really love one particular town, but that activity isn't as prevalent in the area because of the landscape, because of what the landscape offers or doesn't offer in this case. So again, a lot of people are moving to the Oregon coast with the idea of getting outdoors and engaging in specific activities that they're interested in, and being able to look at what areas cater to those activities best is going to help you start to narrow things down. And that's really the point of this video and the point of having this conversation, because there are so many options, there are so many towns and regions of the Oregon coast. What are the main criteria that you need to look at to start narrowing things down, and how can we distill, you know, 20, 30 towns down to 3 or 4 towns, 1 or 2 towns that are really going to be top priority for your home search? And if you are thinking about moving to the Oregon coast and you want to have a conversation about starting to narrow down what the priorities should be, give us a call, send us a text, shoot us an email, or again, click that link down below in the description of the video, schedule a Zoom call with us, and we can talk about your budget, your timeline, your interests, your lifestyle, your hobbies, activities that you want to engage in, what type of environment you want to live in. And again, we can start narrowing down that list so we can put together a game plan for you, so when the time comes, you can be off and running. And if this video was helpful, make sure to hit the like button. That helps us out a lot. If you want to get more videos like this, make sure to subscribe to the channel and tap the little bell to get notified every time we drop a new video. We really appreciate you watching as always, and until next time, we'll talk to you later.